All right, so then the big one, repeated interaction. So I've mentioned a couple times that if you want cooperation in a game that is not designed for cooperation, you got to change the game, right? If the game is pushing you towards not cooperating, towards the bad Nash equilibrium that you don't like, then you have to make the game different in some way. So the prisoner's dilemma is actually a really good example of this, right? So we talk about the prisoner's dilemma. It's in everybody's interest to confess and betray their partner. But if you think about it, that doesn't really rely on the real world. In fact, I mean, a lot of times, people who commit crimes do not rat on their partners. Right? Why? Why not? Well, because really, the table that we drew of our payouts was wrong. Right? We drew a table where if you confess, then you get a little bit less jail time, and then that's sort of the end of the game. But that's not really the end of the game, is it? The end of the game is that you go home from the police station, everybody finds out that you confessed, they get mad at you, and they do bad things to you, right? At the very least, they exclude you from the social circle or whatever. So what's this saying? Well, this is saying that the game that we drew, if we change it, if we add, say, hey, we're going to punish you later for betraying, then that changes the payouts of the game. And the payout of the game is no longer just, hey, if I confess, I get a little bit less jail time, but it's I get a little bit less jail time, and also maybe I'm going to get beat up later or something like that. I don't like that. So my payout would really be lower, and then the payoff matrix that we wrote down, the table would change, and then maybe the Nash equilibrium would change. Right? So you can change the outcome by simply changing the game. Right? That's one way in which you can get cooperation in games where that don't encourage it, by simply playing a different game instead. One common way this pops up is in the form of repeated interaction. If you are interacting with the same people over and over again, in other words, if they have the ability to punish you later for something that you did earlier, or reward you later for something you did earlier, then that can really change the actual game that you're playing in a really major way, right? One way to enforce a threat or a promise is if there is the possibility of reciprocity. If you can be rewarded for good deeds or punished for bad ones, that's going to be one way of keeping you in line. So reciprocity is only possible if the game keeps going after it's over. One way in which we can sort of model this out is in the format of repeated games, where you're playing the same game against the same person over and over and over. Right? When you do this, you can build credible threats and promises because you know that you'll be punished if you break them. So in the prisoner's dilemma example, forget about going home after the police station and getting beat up or whatever. Imagine you know that you're going to show up at the police station every single day with the exact same person, and you're going to choose to confess or defect every single time over and over and over and over again, right? So you might walk in on the first day going, oh, this is going to be terrible. We're always going to confess on each other all the time. We're going to get this terrible outcome, and that's going to just go on forever. But then you realize, wait a minute, if it's not in my interest to stay silent, right? That's not the Nash equilibrium outcome. But if they stay silent, I can reward them by staying silent as well. And if I stay silent, they can reward me later by staying silent. And so we can try not playing the Nash equilibrium and then only punish each other if we defect, which allows us to get the good outcome because we have the ability to reward the other person later for continuing to play that good outcome. So if you're playing the same person over and over, you can build credible threats and promises because you know you'll be punished if you break those promises. So if you're both cooperating with each other and your opponent stops, then you can also stop, which changes the payout of the game. Right? It's no longer, if I stay silent rather than confess, I get a little more jail time or whatever. Instead, it's if I stay silent instead of confess, I get a better outcome this time and next time and next time and next time and next time, and it all sort of adds up to enough that it's worth it to you to keep cooperating. We talked about with oligopolies how they manage to keep those prices high because there's a few enough people that they can manage to cooperate. This is an example of what's going on with them, right? So all firms in an oligopoly are playing a game. They're playing a game where they, you can simplify it and say they can either keep their prices high or they can cut their prices a little bit low. If they cut their prices a little bit lower, then they're going to take a bigger chunk of the market for right now. It's going to be more profitable. What keeps them from doing it? Well, it's the fact that they're playing this same game with these same people over and over and over again. It's a repeated game, right? So we're all cooperating by keeping our prices high. If we defect, if we break our promise by one of us keeping our prices, dropping our prices lower, then everyone else is going to punish me by also dropping the price. Right? We're going to have a price war. We're both up here. We're playing the same game over and over and over again. Right? One day I come in, I'm like, I'm going to cut my prices. Then suddenly you're going to punish me. We're both going to have low prices, and we're going to be down here forever. Right? And so the ability to reward the good behavior of keeping your prices high is what allows us to keep cooperating up here. It's the fact that we can punish or reward each other for cooperating. The way that this pops up, I mean, obviously, we live in a society, right? If you do something really bad, people can punish you for it, or shun you, or whatever, and that is one way that people are kept in line and not betraying each other all the time. Which does have some interesting implications. It suggests, like, for example, that we're more likely to behave in cooperative ways and when we're very visible, right? People can really see what you're doing. They're going to have the ability to reward or punish you later, which, is going to be more effective than if they don't know what you're doing. All right, so sort of summing all this up, things that we have covered. Normal form, that's simultaneous games on the table, right? How do we solve those out? Nash equilibrium, concept of Nash equilibrium, where we are both doing our best responses to each other at the same time, and the idea of the best response, also important. The game tree games that have timing in them, we have those. And then also the idea of commitment devices, things that are going to allow us to cooperate with each other by forcing us to commit to a particular option. And by the way, this is just a short list of the kinds of things that will allow us to commit, right? There are lots of other things that you can do to change the game. For example, you could remove options from yourself, right? Imagine that you're about to play this game and you're B, and you're like, I really like to be up here rather than down here. You could I don't know what down actually is, but let's say that it's you're going to open a store in downtown. Let's say A is either opening a store in Ballard or downtown. B is similarly to open a store in Ballard or downtown. Right? You really want to convince A, hey, I really want you to go to Ballard, please. So maybe I will call up the real estate agent who is opening the store down, or has the store downtown. I'm going to burn bridges with them. I'm going to insult them to their face, so they'll never work with me again. And so then A knows, B can't actually go downtown anymore. B has to go up. So now I believe that B's going to stick to their word because they've literally removed one of the options that they have. They can't betray me anymore. They've made sure of it. And so it's going to go on. People also try, especially when you're talking about like pricing games, to get ahead of the other person. So imagine that you are in a game where you have a new market, and you suspect that in this market there's probably going to be room for like one high-priced version and one low-priced version, and you'd rather be the high-priced version. Well, if you can announce your high-priced good first, then that sort of forces the other person to pick the low-priced option, right? So this is the case where going first is a benefit. So if you can go faster than everybody else and announce first, that limits the options that the other person has, right? It also takes away your opportunity to choose the low-price option, right? And if they know that you can't choose the low-price option, they're not going to anticipate that you will. So by removing options for yourself, that's another way in which you can basically have a commitment to this particular outcome.